Hey guys, Shane here, so welcome to part 3 of my Panther 126 build. In this episode we're going to be taking a look at detailing the upper hull with lots of photo etch goodness. So taking a look at one of the two surviving photographs of Panther 126, we're going to take a look at detailing the stowage bins, especially the port side bin that's been heavily damaged. So in order to recreate this, I'm going to take a grinding burr from my Dremel here. I'm going to start removing material from the kit supplied part. So also the starboard side stowage bin also has a slight dent in it, so we're just going to recreate that by just adding a very slight dent to the leading edge here. And once we're happy with that, I'm just going to clean it up with some liquid cement. So in order to get the lid here of the port side bin to actually look realistic, I'm going to start removing material from the plastic here, again using a grinding drum. And then once I've taken enough material off, I'm going to actually start bending it with a pliers just to create that kind of bent sheet metal look. And once it's been distorted, I add some photo etch brackets and hinges just to add some extra detail. And I'm going to mount it in place just using some liquid CA glue. So the exhausts are going to get the same treatment. I'm just going to grind away some of the excess material just to keep them in scale. And I'm also going to create some of the crossbars that are found inside the exhaust ports. So I'm just going to take the finest drill bit I have from my pin vise. I'm going to bore 2 holes, and once I'm done with them, I'm going to insert a very small piece of stretch sprue, and that's going to be the crossbar. So just adding some of the photo etch now. The Edward set has a bracket for mounting the jack to, however it's way too big. They have like a U-beam, however on the original piece it's actually about maybe a quarter of the size that Edward has you have you believe it is. So I basically cut all but 1/4 of that length and glue it back in place later on. You'll see it later on in this video when I cop that it's inaccurate. I'm going to mount the 2 exhausts, just using a little bit of Revell Contacted, just some nice slow setting glue just to give me plenty of time to affix things and line things up. So the Edward set also has some armoured shrouds for the exhausts, and I'm just going to start shaping them using a brush here just to get the correct form. And I'm just going to mount them in place now with a little bit of super glue. So since this is a man production Panther, it uses some of the smaller type idlers, and I'm going to use some Clipper model small type Panther idlers that were very kindly donated to me. So I just have to modify the kit supplied idler arm by just removing a small bit of material and test fitting until I'm happy with the end result here. So I built the many wheels off camera because I didn't think you guys want to see that. So we're going to keep moving on with our build. So I'm going to add some of the more photo etch details to the upper hull, starting with the driver's periscope shroud. And then for the really iconic shores and plates, we're going to use Headlight set for this kit. So I have very basic tools for working with photo etch at the moment. I just have a few razor blades, a large pliers and a needle file, and then just a couple of tweezers. And so far I've managed to kind of do most of the work that I need for this kit with them. I have no proper photo etch bending or folding tools. However, I kind of get it to work with this, but I don't know how well it will do for more complicated shapes. So these are quite delicate, but they are neons better than the kit supplied shores and plate brackets. And I'm just going to assemble everything just using liquid CA glue. I also want to create a little bit of battle damage to the part of the shores and plates that are directly beneath where the shelled impacts came in from. So to simulate a little bit of battle damage, I'm just going to catch and deform the cut area just to create that the sheet metal is being cut by incoming fire. And then I'm going to mount everything to the Panther using a bit of super glue. So I decided to add a little bit more detail to the engine vents and exhausts by just using a little bit of Mr. Surface 500 just to add a bit of cast texture. So when the putty silhouette, I'm just going to come in here and stipple it just to create a little bit of a cast texture. And the crew heater is also going to get the same treatment here. Just being careful not to paint any of the putty onto any of the bolts or rivet detail here. So with the heater mounted, I'm going to start adding more details to the upper hull. So I'm going to start moving on to the tool brackets. Now this was one of the most involved steps, and originally I was going to try to sub out the kit supply tools with some spare ones from a dragon kit that I had laying around. However, it just didn't work. This was built for a different kit, and they just don't quite work. They don't look right, so we're going to go back later on and actually start using the photo-etched brackets and the kit supplied parts. Now moving on to the main gun travel lock, which was a little bit finicky to build, I have to say. It didn't make things easier the fact that I'm about 3 feet away from this piece when I'm working on it, because I have a camera between me and the part. It's the only way I can film and keep things in shot, so you guys can see what I'm doing. So often it means like I'm literally like straining just to actually be able to build these kits, but it just happens. It's the only way. This is the cross you have to bear when you make YouTube videos. So I started using the kit parts and the Headlight photo etch, with the exception of a dragon fire extinguisher, just as a little bit better detail. And I'm going to start going back now and using the kit parts and the photo etch in combination, just to get things to kind of marry up and look a little bit more consistent. Now I really should have used a piece of balsa wood and photo etch to recreate the jack block, and I might well do that in a later video. So I kind of got a bit impatient and used the kit part first, but I might well go back and replace it with a more finer detailed piece. Here's another bracket, again using the kit parts with photo etch parts from Headlight, and I think it looks pretty okay. So I'm going to come back and I'm going to pull these off the kit, and I'm actually going to go back and use the kit supply tools. I'm going to remove the molded on clasp detail here, and I'm going to replace it with photo etch. So it's kind of delicate work, and you do remove a little bit of detail doing it. However, once everything's in place and the new clasps have been mounted, it looks pretty good. So the clasps for the Panther supplied by Headlight in this kit are a little bit basic. They're not the full workable clasps that you get in more modern photo etch sets. However, once they're folded up, they do look pretty good, and they are neons better than the molded on plastic, basically blobs that Tamiya could reproduce back in the 90s. Now I'm going to start mounting all these details just using a little bit of liquid CA glue. So another noticeable detail on the other surviving photograph of 126 is this area here just below the ball mount for the machine gun. And for a long time I thought it was a blemish. I was trying to debate with myself, is it a shell hit or a blemish from the photograph itself. So I decided to bite the bullet, and I think it's actually a glancing hit from incoming fire, whether it be from an M4 Sherman, an M10, or maybe an anti-tank gun, because all three were present inside the streets of Crinkelt, and all of them had pot shots at 126 as they tried to run out of town. So instead of using the method I used for doing the other shell hits, I'm just going to create a basic blemish using my various different drill bits here, or my various different grinding bits on my Dremel here. Just being careful not to sink it too deep, as this is only meant to be a glancing hit. Just like in the previous steps, I'm just going to add a little bit of putty once it's allowed to dry for a few seconds. Then I'm going to add the crater. So another noticeable detail on 126 is the fact that its armoured convoy light is missing its cover. And in order to recreate this, I took a set from Tiger Model Designs, which is their AFV headlight kit for the German vehicles. And these are fantastic resin updates. So we're going to be taking the option with the headlight without the front cover. So these are fantastic. I use Tiger Model Designs for a lot of my Sherman builds as well. They do absolutely fantastic upgrades and well worth checking out. I'm also going to add the power line, or the power conduit, which is a piece of lead wire that's actually supplied in the kit. So once that's allowed to dry, we'll shape that and get the correct form. So before I start adding the photo etch grills to the exhausts and vents, I'm just going to take some flat black and paint the inner faces of the various grills and heaters, just so we don't have any bare plastic showing through the photo etch. So once that's allowed to dry, we're going to start taking a little bit of gel type super glue, and I'm just going to put a small dab on each edge. I'm not going to put any glue along the actual struts themselves. I don't want to get any glue marks or any super glue filling in the griddle itself. I'm also going to start adding the covers for the heater and exhaust vent here, or not the exhaust vent, the cooling vent. I'm using liquid CA glue now, just because I don't want it too thick. So with the photo etch done, we're going to start adding more of the plastic details, starting with the engine cover. Now we'll move on to some smaller fittings on the engine deck. So now I'm going to start adding the photo etch spare track holders. So these are really fine photo etch brackets. Pretty simple to form, they're just basically big U's. And I'm just going to do this with a fine tweezers here. Again, just trying to keep everything square. And then I was going to take some liquid CA glue and start mounting them in place. Now this turned out to be a bit messy just because, again, I'm about 3 feet away from what I'm doing. So I did not fill in the actual locating pin marks for the spare track holders, so I could have a point of reference to mount the photo etch onto. So I'm just going to take a little bit of gel type super glue and then mount the photo etch directly on top of those 2 points. On the side that took the hits, I actually cut the spare track rack in half and then distorted and bent it out of shape, again just to simulate shrapnel and incoming fire cutting the sheet metal and bending it out of place. I'm also going to add these small photo etch brackets, which I believe are for the tool, or the, should I say, for the tow cables. And speaking of tow cables, we're going to be using Eureka's Panther G tow cable set. So this is my first time ever looking at anything from Eureka. I see them advertised all the time, so I decided to pick up a pack. And they're very nice. You get full resin toe eyelets, very nicely detailed, very little bubbling or flashing, as well as the smaller ones for the track changing cable. And then for the actual cables themselves, these are actually lovely copper spools. And the nice thing about copper is it will actually keep any shape that you bend it into a little bit better than steel ones will. So it will make our life a little bit easier when it comes to posing them on the model. So since they're resin, once they're removed from their casting blocks, I give them a bath in some alcohol, in this case just a little bit of X20 thinner. So once these parts are allowed to dry, I'm just going to take some gel type super glue, dip the copper into it, and then just insert it into the eyelet. Simple as that. Once it's allowed to dry, I'm going to start mounting them to the phaco. So I do glue the front ones in place, the front eyelets, just so they lock in place. Again, this is optional. You can leave yours free if you want and then paint them separately. I don't mind painting details in situ. I'm kind of gotten used to it now. So I'm just going to lock that one in place, and then we're going to start threading the tow cables around the back deck here using the photo etch brackets to lock things in place. So they were a little bit finicky to get into place, just to take the spring out of them by just bending them into shape without damaging anything. But I really think those tow cables really do add a massive amount of detail. So with that, guys, we'll call part 3 complete. So in part 4, we're going to be taking a look at creating the tracks, the final shores and plates, and then the final detailing of the gun turret, or the turret, should I say. And then we'll be ready for painting and the diorama. So thank you so much, guys, for watching. I really hope you enjoyed it. I've been really enjoying working on this kit. It's really been making me try new things and pushing myself to add more detail to my builds. So big thank you, guys. I really hope you enjoy it. I've been Shane, and I'll catch you in the next video.